But I did want to start off with, of course, saying from the government, I'm here to help. And I want to thank the Big Data Conference, the Indy Big Data Conference, for inviting us over. And I wanted to thank the local FBI office, Special Agent in Charge Grant Mendenhall, ASAC, Alex Middleton and his crew for giving us the opportunity to come out today to address you on this topic. It was kind of interesting when we got the call, they said, hey, you can talk about whatever you want. And that's a broad topic, especially when you're talking about big data, security, FBI. And so we thought about 30 minutes of excruciating statistics might be good. And then we thought maybe national security made easy, or maybe fun with laws and regulations. But we thought we'd maybe save that for the next conference. Because what probably would be best for us, I thought, is in doing these things, you want to add value. You want to be interesting. So I'm going to try to add value. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at what we know, where we're at, what we think we know, where we think we're going, and how we need to do that collectively. Right? This is going to be some about the FBI, of course. It's going to be a lot about all of us together. And so we'll go on from there. One of the things that I wanted to do, where's the thing here? So here be dragons. One of the things that I thought it'd be an interesting way to explore this. That's my bio. We can go back to that, I guess. My cyber journey started back in about 1992 as a Secret Service agent. I was in their electronic crimes special agent program. We did hackers and data thefts, and it was kind of the Wild West days of digital forensics and computers. We were working on live hard drives. We weren't doing images. It was pretty crazy back then as we all started to figure our way forward. Since then, I've gone on a little bit of an odyssey. I came to the FBI. I've worked then other things as well. I worked counterterrorism. I worked drugs, transnational organized crime, counterintelligence, and then found my way back in the cyber division. It was a lot like coming home. And it was interesting, too, because a lot had changed, but nothing had changed. So when people, especially the young cyber supervisors and agents, when they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know cyber, they're right in that some of the modern techniques and the modern trade that's being applied, the new algorithms or the new tools, I'm probably not as sharp on them, certainly, as our field guys are. But from the early 90s till now, the basis of data, how data is used, how it's stolen, how it's misused, really hasn't changed. It's bigger, it's faster, most certainly. It's a bit more complex, but the basics are the same. So one of the ways I thought is we're on a little bit of an adventure here. So what I thought I'd like to do is talk about it through kind of that lens of adventure. And so the Here Be Dragons thing kind of came up when you start thinking about adventure. And it struck me it was right because as people began exploring the world around us, there was a lot of fear. And this warning, this Here Be Dragons warning, was about capturing those fears and warning other people about the things that we don't know. And so I thought that was good. The other reason I thought it was slightly better than Abandon Hope, All Ye Who Enter Here. So when putting this together, we expected to find that Here Be Dragons was on all the ancient maps and is, through history. And in fact, it only exists in a couple of places originally. One of the most famous one is the Hunt Lennox Globe. So the Hunt Lennox Globe was developed in 1510, and it's a small, about a 5-inch copper globe where the earth was inscribed on it. Why was it inscribed? Why did it say, Here be dragons? Well, near as I can tell, originally, again, what people, as they started exploring, and they knew what they knew, and they felt pretty comfortable in the known world. But as they crossed over that edge into the unknown, they crossed that edge and began exploring, observing, recording what it is that they saw, they would get to a point where they would either find things that were new cultures, new dangers, new truths, and they would mark that there. The other thing that they knew is that there was more, and we don't know what was out there, and they described it in only the ways that they could. In this case, dragons seemed reasonable. Could be dragons over there. And so when we started thinking about big data, it was kind of similar in that as we go forward, we're in the first minute of the first inning of really a dramatic change for society. Check it out on the media, right? There be dragons here. There's people worried about what's going to happen and what's going to come. The good news is, and I don't want to ruin the rest of the presentation, but we've already done this. We already know what to do. We just need to do it. So I'm going to walk through some of that. So when it comes to exploration, this is one of my favorite explorers, Ernest Shackleton. I don't know if you've read about him. It's some interesting books out there. They riff on him for a lot of different reasons, leadership, exploration, just out of sheer historical interest. He was born in 1874. He led 3 British expeditions to the Antarctic. He ultimately died at age 47. And I've read a couple of his books, and there's really amazing feats of courage and leadership and drive. So I'd recommend that if you get a chance. He did not fear dragons. This is a guy who hauled horses to Antarctica, rode them until they died, and then ate them raw and frozen. So there wasn't a lot of fear there, but he loved exploring. And in fact, he was quoted as saying, "When it's easy, I hate it." And so this is why he did what he did. He was driven to explore, much as you are all driven to explore in this new digital world. So you can see the advertisement that he put up before one of his expeditions. And I'll just go ahead and read it if you can't read it up there. It says, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success." All right, so the ad was actually met with overwhelming response. There were more people responded to that ad that he could take, which is interesting. So we were thinking about that in terms of this today, and I think the ad would read something like CISO or CIO wanted for hazardous position. Low wages, bitter cold server farms, long hours of complete darkness, safe retirement doubtful, honor and recognition in event of success, probably doubtful too. Still, how many responses would that ad get? You're all here, right? So this is an adventure that people cannot not be drawn into. And what I thought I would do is, just like Shackleton's adventure started off in his known world, let's take a look at our known world. Computing evolved over the last century. So in the last 72 years, starting back in 1946, the ENIAC computer was developed. And that's the big one up there. It was so large, it filled an entire room. 37 years later, in 83, Apple released one of the first personal computers, the Lisa. That's the middle one there. And this had a gigantic 5 megabyte hard drive at the time, right? 12 years later, in 1995, the average processing speed of a computer was 0.3 gigahertz. And hard drives averaged around a gigabyte. Another 10 years, 2005, the average processing speed of a computer hit about 2 gigahertz, with hard drives around 500 gigabytes. Today, another 14 years later, hard drives are about a terabyte, and the average processing speed of the Apple MacBook is 3.2 gigahertz. So in the last 72 years of general computing, we've seen a 1,000 times increase in speed and 200 times increase in storage, which is pretty extraordinary when you consider this doesn't even touch research computing or specialty gear that's out there, things that are being developed. This is just average, in your home, my dad has 3 of them kind of things, right? And this trend is just going to continue. So that's kind of our evolution of tech. So let's look at the hackers a little bit. Originally, the problems we faced were criminals and hackers, and mainly lone hackers or pranksters in a cyber landscape. And we had some independent thinkers, mad scientists. And these folks online conducted fraud, they conducted intrusions, they hacked for recognition and fun. They used a variety of techniques. 1988, the Morris worm was created. It was the first of its kind. Started off with good intentions. The Morris worm was to evaluate the size of the internet, ended up ultimately creating the first DDoS attack. Not good. In 1995, Kevin Poulsen, who's a hacker, cheated a radio station to win a Porsche. And what he did is he hacked in the phone system, he blocked the ability to receive calls, and ensured that he was the 102nd caller. Won the car. Not a bad plan. 2002, another DDoS attack actually struck the internet, taking down most of the DNS servers. And this was probably the first large-scale, sophisticated attack that we've seen. The bad guys were learning. As technology grows, those that would abuse it also grow. And so these malicious actors, they hack for fame and bona fides and fun to promote political and social agendas and limited financial gains. So we've seen kind of an evolution, as with tech, from a technical challenge, aspirational competition, advocating social change, to disruption and criminal gain. Early on, the attacks were small. They hit individuals, they hit smaller companies, and they hit some banks for modest theft. In 2002, the FBI's cyber division was created. And the goal of the time was to identify, pursue, and defeat cyber adversaries. Okay, sounds reasonable. However, as technology expanded, so did the malign cyber actor. The opportunities for good created opportunities for bad. And the FBI ultimately had to change its strategy. We were technically sophisticated, but our strategy was dated. And it was dated because we were reactive. Our relationships were reactive. Our cases were aimed at penalizing cyber criminals or spies, but we needed to be proactive in order to get ahead of the threat and be preventative. We needed to prevent the incidents rather than mitigate them on the back end. And these are some of the lessons that we learned with terrorism, too. We had to move to a more preventative model. So we passed really from our known world into the edge between what we knew and what we thought or what we faced. And so let's take a look at this kind of ragged, messy edge. Every day for us is a new intrusion or a hack. And the big question, we hear it from Congress and we hear it in the media, is what's experiencing? Is it out of control? What's going on? So I want to tell you a story. September 11th, 2011, of course, we had the 9/11 attacks, and everybody remembers kind of where they were, assuming they were around at that time.
Crossroads of America.
I don't know what that is, but evidently it's the crossroads of America. So what, is anybody from Texas here? All right, so we have a couple of people from Texas. What happened on September 15th, 2001? Right? What happened September 15th, 2001 is a tugboat pushing about 5 or 6 barges filled with coiled steel got outside the ship channel between South Padre Island, Texas, and the mainland, got out of the ship channel, crashed into this pylon, and knocked out 2 segments of the bridge at about 2:30 in the morning. 8 cars went off, 8 people died. There was 1 car that went off, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, that actually the people survived in it, and there was reasons why. So I find myself in Brownsville at that time. Of course, we had gone through 9/11 earlier in the week, and so now at the end of the week, we're getting hit with this, and then the question is, terrorists attacked New York, they attacked the Pentagon, is this a terrorist attack? So we roll out, and I don't know, it's plausible, and I found myself standing on the bridge of the tugboat that was pushing the steel, and it was dark, it was kind of an overcast night, and as I stood there, I was looking at the headlights that were it was one of those pusher tugboats, and I was standing on the bow of the bridge, and looking forward. I could just barely see the front edge of the first barge, so just the bow of the boat, if you will. That's all I could see with the headlights. And I asked the driver, the pilot, I said, hey, how much does this thing weigh? He said, 120 million pounds. So it was all coiled steel. So, okay, that's a lot. How fast was this thing going? He says, 5 to 7 knots, depending. We're going about 6 knots. I said, okay. How long did it take to stop? 200-300 yards, depends. I said, okay. So what I realized at that minute, and I'll show you how this is relevant here in a second, is 2 minutes before the ship touched the bridge, the accident happened. Right? There was nothing that guy could have done to stop that ship back here just because of the fact that he couldn't see out past the bow of his boat. So he couldn't see the problem until they were ready to hit it, and then it was too late. And even then, the accident happened 2 minutes before because it was going to take 2 minutes to stop it. 300 yards at those knots. I did the math on my smartphone. So that's what it said anyway. So the thing keeps shutting off on me. All right, so when we come to like where we're at in the cyber world and the activity that we're seeing, what we're seeing right now are manifestations of historical acts. These hacks that we're seeing, these infiltrations, almost all of them happened sometime before. They happened months ago. In some cases, they've happened years ago. We've had some cases where the malign cyber actor has been on the computer, on the system, longer than the system administrators of the business. Okay? And so then when the exfil gets found, this happened a long time ago, so people are freaking out. They're firing whoever's there today because they're not finding it. The accident happened a long time ago. And so we can't wait until we see the accident, until we start shoring up our defenses. And we have to start thinking again, coming back to proactive. We have to be more proactive. We need better defenses, certainly. We need better channel markers. We need better maps. We need smarter captains. But at very least, we need better headlights. And I think for us, the way we're looking at it right now, the headlights is the partnerships. So if we can start working with you all, we can all start working together, the government and the private sector, more aggressively. And ultimately what we can do is we can get ahead of the problems. We can scope them out before they become problems, and then maybe we can turn some of this off. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of where we're at here on the edge. In 2017, we saw significant losses from a wide variety of crimes. The FBI's Internet Complaint Internet Complaint Center, IC3, gave us some of our statistics for this. So 2017, $600 million in business email compromise losses, $200 million in romance or confidence scams, $66 million in identity thefts, and $29 million in phishing attacks. Just so far this year, we've received 232,189 complaints, and with losses over about $2 billion. Those are the only things that are being reported. A lot of this goes unreported, which is another issue that we have to work on. So not only today are we facing individuals as we have historically, but we're also facing nation-state actors, non-state actors, and illicit cyber enterprises, organized crime, if you will. The recent indictments show that we're facing threats from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. 2017, DOJ indicted 3 Chinese hackers working for a China-based internet security firm, Boyasek. These individuals were charged with conspiring to hack into private corporate entities to maintain unauthorized access, steal sensitive internal documents, communications from those entities. In 2018, the U.S. publicly attributed the destructive NotPetya attack to the Russian military. This attack caused billions of dollars of damage across the globe. In 2018, DOJ charged 9 Iranian nationals for stealing 31 terabytes of data from U.S. and foreign universities, companies, and government agencies. All these actors were associated with the Mabna Institute, and they conducted these intrusions on behalf of the Iranian government. Recently, DOJ indicted a North Korean actor as part of a conspiracy group and a North Korean front company. He's one of a conspiracy, which means there's more. And this group was involved in the Sony intrusion, the Bank of Bangladesh heist, which was about $81 million, and the WannaCry ransomware attack. And this is the first time that we've seen an indictment on the DPRK working at behest of the government of North Korea. The other threat that we face is really the cybercrime threat, just in kind of writ large. And in 2018, we coordinated a law enforcement effort with our partners to disrupt some business email compromise cases. It was intended to intercept and the scheme intercepts and hijacks wire transfers from businesses and individuals. We arrested 74 people, seized nearly $2.4 million, recovered about $14 million more in 5 different countries. So we've seen the emergence also of this blended threat. And the blended threat is where nation states are partnering with criminal hackers to commit these crimes. And again, they will pay the hacking groups to do the intrusion, establish persistence, and then target specific accounts or hand over that package to the foreign governments to pursue. In the Yahoo case, 2 Russian FSB officers were working with Russian cyber criminals to access specific Yahoo accounts. So while there was the Yahoo attack, there was some specific interest by the government, and they paid for that. The illicit cyber enterprises and crimes as a service have also blossomed. So cyber criminals have organized themselves into a coherent ecosystem, each with a specialized skill, and they sell these skills back and forth to one another. In the process, all the criminals, their sophistication has gone up. So we have people that are creating bulletproof hosting sites and selling those to other criminals, et cetera. Botnets. They will create a good botnet, and then they will lease that out or rent it out to people for their own purposes. In the past, we saw cyber actors conducting defacements, thefts, and small-level intrusions. And now we're seeing activities at greater scale. There's much more of an interest in damage to computer systems, data theft, fraud schemes, attacks on personal privacy information, PII, and attacks on critical infrastructure, ICS SCADA. Basic cyber hygiene continues to be the main flaw. And we have to all work aggressively to fix this. Much of what we're seeing is preventable, and it really just requires people to understand what it is they need to do and for them to do it. And I'm going to pause here. I'm giving this away. This is free for now. I'm going to give you the cyber short course. You can take this back to your workforce. Update your system, get your patches, and in the name of all that's holy, stop clicking things. If we could get the general user to do those 3 things, I think our world would become a lot easier. So remember those things. You can take that. It's free. There's some CDs outside later. The actors that we encountered before and the actors that we're seeing now use the same techniques essentially. So they're a little bit more complex or they're a little bit more elegant when they're written. But essentially we're talking DDoSes, social engineering, worms, phishing. But they're doing things faster, more complex, and at scale in some cases. We're seeing significant increases in use of ransomware, BECs, the business email compromise, malware, and botnets. More criminals are operating the dark web. They like the secure, anonymous, encrypted piece. We have ways to work on that. Some are better than others. Definitely a concern that we have as we go forward. Today, we see the actors doing it much less for glory or cred, script kiddies maybe a little bit, but really more for financial reasons, national power, and strategic advantage. Somewhere along the line, the adults in the government took notice of what was happening and saw the advantage that they could take, and they are now doing that. Cyber espionage and influence campaigns are on the rise. The threshold for national security events is decreasing. And we've seen an interesting thing in cyber where we can't rely on what the apparent intent is of the activity, because the activity in and of itself can create a national security event, even if that's not the case. Like, they didn't mean when they stole all that data to create a national security event, but once the data is stolen and the company comes out and says, hey, we lost, pretty much everybody's data, this is a big problem because we don't know where the data is at, we don't know who's going to have it, we don't know what the impact, and that's everybody in this room, everybody that works for the government, for the military, whatever. This is a national security problem. So that blurring of the lines continues. The theft of PII, the disruption of health equipment, destruction of data systems, regardless of why they happen, are actually a threat to our general security. Oops, I think I hit that wrong. Let me go back. Recently, we saw North Korean indictment. The actors victimized individuals through WannaCry, companies as Sony, and the government entities, Bank of Bangladesh. We continue to see the spectrum grow. We continue to see the threat evolve, and we would anticipate that it's going to continue to blend. We've focused on imposing costs and consequences where we can. We're going to continue to do that. But one of the things that we've clearly found is that we have to have partnerships with you all in order to get ahead of it, to prevent those threats, and to close those gaps before they happen. We do that in a number of ways. We have the private sector outreach through our offices. We have InfraGard. We have the Domestic Security Alliance Council. We have the National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance, the NCFTA. It's in a couple of places in the United States. And then we conduct bilateral relationships too. So I'd really encourage, here in Indy, go to Indianapolis. We tell the SACs, the special agents in charge, when they go out to their field offices, that they're responsible for the relationships in their area of responsibility. And so please have those relationships. We want to have those relationships before the bad thing happens, so that it's, hey, it's me and talking to you, rather than, yes, it's FBI calling, I'd like to talk to you about this massive problem that you're having. First thing we get, yeah, we need you to talk to our outside counsel. We can work all that out on the front end. It goes faster, it's easier for everybody, and it's more beneficial. We share information as well. We put out private industry notifications. We put out FBI liaison and alert messages called pins and flashes. And then we put out public service announcements. The public service announcements go out more broadly. They go out through IC3, and we put them out on the .gov website. The other ones are developed through the relationships, and we'll get you on mailers. And so if we get indicators of compromise that are hitting your sector, we will share them with you. We can't tell you where they came from. We could, but you know. We'll share them with you, and then more broadly on the flashes, we'll let you know if there's like dangers or there's concerns that you should be aware of, so that you can tighten up your systems, because we can't do that. We don't do that. It's critically important that we share information. A lot of the best information that we get comes from partners like you, picking up the phone, giving us a call and saying, hey, look, I just had this funny thing happen, or I just had this strange thing happen on the system, or I got this call, or I got this phishing email. Share that with us so that we can then clean it up, push it out, and make sure that everybody is similarly defended. The other thing we're trying to do is we work very closely with our international partners. The defining cyber as far as an area is really difficult, because it's very rare that the actors, the infrastructure, the victims are ever in the same place at the same time. So what we've found is that we created essentially an international task force to work on these things. And we work with them for tearing down infrastructure if it's overseas. We work on it with arresting folks if they're traveling. And you'll see that's why we indict people that, you look at some of these cats, they're like, they're never gonna, they travel. And it's a surprise for them when there's a red notice with Interpol and they get picked up by some foreign police department and tossed in jail. And the next thing you know, they're in the United States. For example, Andre Turian was extradited to the United States on September 7th, 2018 from the Republic of Georgia. He's facing charges for conducting computer intrusions for financial crimes as part of a stock manipulation scheme. He's facing those charges because our international partners acted. They arrested him. They worked together. We shared that information, and now he's back. And there's others. We could go through more, but I won't. I know the time is short. So to disrupt these cyber illicit enterprises, we've also taken kind of a different strategy. We've started to look at really back to our roots, back to organized crime. We take an enterprise approach on it. We don't hit single actors. We don't hit single victims. We don't work single cases. We try to figure out, based on all the knowledge, the data that we get, the things that we collect, who is the most critical node for these systems, and then we attack those. And we attack those wherever they're at. If it's here, fine. If it's overseas, fine. Really what we want them to do is stop. And so that's kind of where we're going with those cases. We have 56 field offices in the United States, the FBI does. There's one in every state, more than one in some states. Many resident agencies spread out across those states, but every state has a cyber task force, and that's something that we want to work with our other federal partners, our state partners, and our local partners to share resources and really work on those issues that are most concerning to the community. So again, I would refer you all to the Indianapolis field office, talk to them about that and see if there's some ways that you can contribute there. It would be really helpful. So this allows us really to have people everywhere at any time, but like cyber in general, we do manage the workflow. So we may have Indy leading a case, but we could have Los Angeles and Miami actually helping them on a case, because again, cyber can be everywhere at all times, and that's kind of the way that we're pursuing that. But we also know that private industry is really where the solutions are going to exist as the new technology comes online. So now let's look at this. All right. Shackleton said, I've often marveled at the thin line which separates success and failure. That is true. So we're on the edge now. What's our line look like? Where are we going? And I think we want to remember that the future is uncertain, but it is most certainly coming, and it's coming very, very fast. So let's take today. There's an upward trend in the costliness and the severity of cybercrime based on industry's predictions in Dilbert. There are about 2.5 to 3 quintillion bytes of data, which is about 10 million Blu-ray discs every day created. That's about, if you stacked them up, it's like 4 Eiffel Towers on top of each other. 2017, a business fell victim to a ransomware attack every 40 seconds. Today it's 14 seconds. By 2020, there'll be as many as 30 to 50 billion, it's a big throw, of IoT devices. Cybercrime is going to cost about $6 trillion annually by 2021, and this is up from $3 trillion in 2015. I'm sure you've heard some of these statistics before. By 2020, cyber attacks will reach about, or be able to reach about 6 billion people. It's about 75% of the world population. And we don't know what the threats will be doing, but we are working to be more predictive and get ahead of them as much as we can. We're trying to analyze new technologies, identify new actors, identify their intents, how they plan to attack, why they will attack, and who they're going to attack, but this is a place where we need your help. We anticipate the actors are going to continue to merge as we've seen the blended threat, and we predict these actors will do the same things that we see them. They're going to continue to penetrate systems, establish persistence, steal, sell information, as well as conduct economic espionage, state-sponsored espionage, theft, extortion, and destruction of data and machines. So this is a hack timeline, shows size of hack over time. Starts off in, was that a laser? There we go. I screwed this up. All right, that's the laser. There we go, the laser. All right, 2004, you can see here we've got AOL, and then as we move forward to 2017, just to hack the size, the amount of intrusion activity, you can see it growing. In the Bureau, there's an old saying, it's big cases, big problems. Small cases, small problems. No cases, no problems. I think with big data, it's something more like big data, big problems. Small data, small problems. No data, bad day. That's a really bad day. The data sets, the number of devices is increasing the attack surfaces exponentially, the attack surfaces exponentially. Because of this, we have to continue to collect information and share it really at a faster rate. The increasing collection of data by cyber-physical systems enabled by IoT, industrial IoT, robotics, AI, biotech, and autonomous vehicles, there's an enormous amount of data that's out there in attack surfaces. So remember the Porsche that he won by hacking? Now you can hack a Porsche. So the difference is dramatic. Technologies, the volume and vulnerability of information is going to create new opportunities for us in an economic sense, certainly, as a developmental sense, yes. For security, yes, absolutely, it's going to help us. But it's also going to create new opportunities for our adversaries. AI is going to help us for cybersecurity, no doubt. There's going to be more rapid identification for malign activities, vulnerabilities, but it's a complex problem because there's this matter of ethics and privacy, especially when you get into security and law enforcement. So these things are going to have to be balanced. They're going to have to be talked through. And really those discussions have to happen on the front end to be the most effective. Quantum computing is going to pose a serious risk to not only today's problems, but yesterday's problems as well, even if they were encrypted, because if they're then decrypted, they're going to reveal all of that information then. Massive data lakes, cloud create new problems. Misconfigured servers can create disasters. Deleted or modified data can destroy analysis, and the economic loss and the reputational damage is quite significant. In some cases, backups don't exist just because of the sheer cost and the size of the backups for companies. And we have to kind of address that and make sure people understand the investment that they have to make in their companies as they grow. All right. Partnerships. Before 9/11, and I'll wrap this up, before 9/11, the departments and agencies of the U.S. government generally believed that we had the time and the space to fight the terrorism fight independently. Everybody was trying hard, everybody was doing their best, but we believed we could do it as independent organisms. That was not correct. We needed to work together. Today, U.S. government, the public sector, and the private sector have believed that this is an issue that we can fight independently. That is equally incorrect. This is something that we need to work together. The truth is we have to share information right now faster and more aggressively than we ever have. We're going to continue to build partnerships. We're going to continue to look for ways that we can aggressively share information, even though it kind of scares people sometimes, and develop those proactive relationships with you. We have to create a culture of sharing. We need to maximize the relationships with our international partners. We need to take a security-first approach to development and deployment. We need to become more predictive. This uncharted territory in the age of exploration became known to explorers through joint ventures, examining surroundings, and sharing information. And the only way that we're going to effectively explore our way through the future of cyber is by doing the same. We're going to take risks. We're going to allow for diversity of thought, but with a commonality of purpose. There are no dragons in cyber. There's just data, there's opportunity, and as our friend said, difficulties are just something to overcome, after all. So I've taken 30 minutes to say it, roughly, maybe a little bit more. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak today. I look forward to better partnerships and better solutions. And if I can answer any questions, even though I've cleverly crimped down on the time for that.
Would you be willing to share the train of thought you have with respect to this delicate balance of safety versus privacy? And if it's too much, I can understand it. It's maybe a separate conversation.
Yeah, I think, it's actually a rich conversation, and I think it's something that is going to be foremost as we go forward. I would not step out from what our director has said. I think that what we need to do is we need to get the right people in the room to have it. From the basis of the United States, from the time they first signed the Constitution, it was a balance between what is best for us all and what is best for the individual. And this is no different than that. So what that looks like, let's be careful not to frame the question in the wrong way. And so, do I want secure communications? You betcha. We all do. But what does that do when we look at the balance between security for everyone and security for an individual? And that's going to be a lot of people in a room having a robust conversation. Sir?
Thanks for a great presentation. I was wondering what the reason for the fairly obvious disconnect between what you presented so capably and federal foreign policy is.
Well, I think that I think what has happened over time is technology and the growth of the whole cyber arena is really rushed forward, and I think government is a necessarily and probably appropriately more deliberate process, and it's complex. And there's people that want to get into a room and they want to talk about the cyber issues, but they want to talk about it in terms of technology. And in fact, probably technology is not where you should have the basis of that conversation. I think you need to bring it back to what are we talking about? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And then, when we talk about our foreign policy or how we're going to respond to, like if we get cybered, are we going to cyber them back? There's difference of opinions there. There's a number of different organizations that are involved in it. And I think everybody is trying to feel their way forward. 9/11, terrorism and post 9/11 was very similar. There was, again, a lot of people trying to do a lot of good things, but in somewhat of an uncoordinated fashion. And I think we're a lot better off Even now, I can see I've been in this position for about 15 months, and I can see the development. We're much tighter now. They're developing lexicons so that everybody can have the same conversation at the same time rather than different conversations at the same time. So I think it's pretty natural in just the changing landscape. And the other thing that I think that adds to the complexity of it is the speed at which technology is changing. So just by the time the USG or whoever gets together and figures out, oh, this is how we're going to deal with that, it's changed. And so we need to have, I think, a little bit more flexible, agile planning as we move forward. I think I cleverly didn't answer that question.